So today I am talking about a little bit more about our mission and vision and what we discerned as our vision and mission a few weeks ago. And as I've said before, we created some powerful statements. You all created some very powerful intentions, aspirations, when we got together and said, this is who we are. This is what we're about. This is how we are choosing to be in the world and how we're choosing to live in the world. And I believe that we can live up to that. We can live those aspirations. And so I want us, again, to say our vision together. Let's say this together, if you will. A spiritually awakened world, living oneness. Take a breath and breathe into that for a moment. A spiritually awakened world, living oneness. Powerful vision for our world. Now let's read our mission together. We inspire transformation. We live consciously. We connect authentically. Breathe into that. Look at what we've said yes to here. This is who we say that we are as a spiritual community, that we inspire transformation. I talked about that last week. We connect authentically. I talked about that a couple of weeks ago. We live consciously. We are making a very clear and powerful declaration when we say we live consciously. What does that really mean? What does it mean to live consciously? Well, I think it's a very complex statement. Very simple, but also rich with meaning and how we choose to live it. And so I believe that if we are going to live consciously, first it means that we are conscious. That we are conscious, first and foremost, of the truth of us, of who we truly are as divine beings, as Butterworth said, as the Christ made manifest. That we come into a conscious awareness of our truth. We make that conscious, and then we live that. We live that through our thinking, we live it through our speech, we live it through our actions. So what does it really mean to be conscious of our truth, our divine nature? We are love, we are expressions of God, of the divine life, of the one source, the one power, as Butterworth talked about. We have to make that conscious. We have to believe it. Have to really accept that that is who we are in truth, and then live it. I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago in my blog. Some of you may have read it. I shared a story about going to San Diego and staying in the beautiful home of someone. And when we arrived, we were greeted by the housekeeper, which was a treat in and of itself, right? And I introduced myself. I said, I'm David. Nice to meet you. And she said to me, my name is Alma. It seems very simple. It seems very simple. That really doesn't mean much at all. But as I contemplated that, as I really took that in, I recognized that when I say I am David, I claim all of the stuff that's associated with David. My history, my past, my fears, my doubts, all of that, you know. And I loved what she said, and I know it's part of her culture, probably translated from a different language to say, my name is Alma. Probably doesn't make much sense, does it? But the difference to me was, what am I claiming? Who am I claiming to be? Am I claiming something about myself continually over and over and over and over again that really isn't true? Or am I willing to stand and claim, I am the Christ? I am the Word made flesh. I am the embodiment of divine life and love and energy. I am that made manifest in this body, in this dimension, in this life. Or am I still claiming my limitation? And that's the distinction that I was making about that. It may be my name and all that's associated with my name, but if I'm willing to say, and I'm not saying you want to introduce yourself as that to other people, maybe that would be a little weird, right? You go up and to your neighbor and say, welcome to the neighborhood, I am the Christ. It's so nice to meet you. They might call the men in white coats, right? But we can say that to ourselves when we can choose to know that. We can choose to know, even though I may say to you, hello, my name is David, I can know. That doesn't define me. That is not my identity. My true identity is the Christ, is the true light, is the Word made flesh. And so I'm going to invite you now to join me in this, and I want to say, if you're willing, you may not yet be willing or ready to say these affirmations. And what I want to say about that is we must make these statements of truth. But I want to invite you, if you're willing, I'm not going to ask you to stand, but to say these with me in declaration of your true nature, making it conscious. So let's say together, if you're willing. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, let's say this together, only if you're willing. I am the Christ of God. Breathe. Feel into that. Feel the truth of that. Feel the energy of that. Next statement, please. I am the Word made flesh. Feel into that. Breathe into that. See what comes up in your mind that might argue with that. And when we teach in unity, we teach denials and affirmations. Denial is simply the idea of not giving power to the limited thought. I will no longer give power to that. That is not my truth. And affirming what we know to be true, declaring what we know to be true. So now let's say this together. I am the light of the world. Breathe into that. One more, I think. I am that I am. As you say it, feel the resonance of that. Feel the truth of that. Feel the vibration of that. And let's say the last one once again. I am that I am. And so we make this conscious as we condition our minds with these statements, with these truth statements. And then we get to live it. And living it for me, as I was thinking through and meditating on this week, it came to me that I like the idea. I'm not suggesting we change it, but what came to me, instead of I live consciously, is I live love consciously. I live love consciously. Because when we know who we are, we get to live it. We get to practice it. A few weeks ago, Scott Sabile was here talking about self-love and how important it is to love ourselves. We get to live it for ourselves. How are we loving ourselves? How are we living love for ourselves? How are we talking about ourselves? You know, your Christ self doesn't get old. The Christ self is not in need of anything. You may be experiencing that in the physical, but your Christ self is perfect, it's whole, it's complete, it is who you are in truth. So I would invite you to stop claiming what is not true about you. Stop speaking it aloud. When you notice yourself thinking something that is untrue about yourself, see if you can shift that. Because what we claim and what we align with, what we declare, what we claim about ourselves, we tend to demonstrate. So what if all we could ever say about ourselves is, I am perfect, I'm whole and complete. I am the light of the world. I am the Christ made flesh. I am the Word expressing in this moment. Can we really, truly, you could say it to each other. I believe everybody in this room would say, yes, you are. Amen, brother. Yes, you are. Support each other in that, knowing that truth, living that truth. Treat yourself well. Be kind to your body. Be aware of what you're putting into your mind. Be aware of what you're putting into your body. Treat yourself as though you are the Christ embodied. Treat your body as though it is the temple of the living, loving Christ's presence. Because it is. It is. So we get to love ourselves. Love ourselves in that. And then we get to extend that to other people. To live consciously is also to live conscious of the truth of everybody else. To know that you are beholding the Christ as you look into the eyes of another person. Regardless of what's going on in the human, that we get to see that and to live that, to live love consciously for each other, to behold that for each other. And so now I am going to ask you to stand for this one. And I want you to turn to someone close to you and say to the other person or persons, you can use 3 people if there's more than. And what I want you to say to each other is, the Christ I am beholds the Christ you are. Let's say that together. Really look at the other person and say that to them as if you really mean it. Let's say it together. The Christ I am beholds the Christ you are. Breathe into that. As you hear those words, as you speak those words, feel the truth of them. Feel them resonating in every aspect and fiber of your being, every cell of your body, remembering that truth. Take a breath. And now please be seated. See how easy it is for us to declare that for each other. But it's easy for us to declare that for each other when we like each other. Or when we agree with each other. Right? What about the people that we don't necessarily like or agree with? It's important to be able to do that, behold that for them as well. Because when we are living consciously, we realize that what we put out into the field is in the field. What we put out through our thinking and through our words is in the field. It's part of consciousness. And when we are speaking words of criticism and judgment, we're putting that in the field. And let me say this about that as well. Guess who feels that first? Who feels it first? Who feels the vibration of criticism and judgment first? The answer is me. I feel it. I resonate with it. Is that what I want to be resonating with? Is that what I want living in my system? Is that how I want to live consciously? If I'm consciously living, do I really want to live in that kind of energy? Probably not. I don't want to be creating that kind of energy. So I want you to close your eyes now and bring to mind someone that you might have judged or might be judging or criticizing. See the picture of that person in your mind. And I want you to say aloud to that person that you have pictured these words, "The Christ I am beholds the Christ you are." Together. The Christ I am beholds the Christ you are. And do you see? You may not see, but you can feel the energy of that. And what I want to say to you is the other person feels the energy of that as well. The other person feels that energy, that blessing. And you don't know what effect your conscious blessing of another person, you don't know the effect it might have in their lives. You don't know how seeing someone as the Christ can add that energy to their lives. That's what prayer is about. That's what blessing is about. We're holding each other in the light of truth. And it's powerful. It's a powerful blessing. And you uplift each other as you do that. So I want to invite you to go somewhere. Next time you're at the grocery store, walk around. As you're walking around, you might not want to do it out loud, but consciously bless the other people. Consciously bless the other people as you walk around the store, as you're in a park or whatever. The Christ I am beholds the Christ you are. You might notice them smiling all of a sudden, or you might notice something changing within them. You might notice nothing, but trust that you are uplifting the energy by choosing to live in the conscious awareness of that person or those persons as the Christ. We live that consciously. And we then, as conscious awareness, we also have the opportunity to respond to people from that place. We don't know what somebody else is going through. You know, I find it really easy, even though it may be a little uncomfortable, it's easy for me to live in this neighborhood and to be siloed, to not be aware of what other people are experiencing. Not having a real idea or conscious awareness of what other people might be experiencing, how other people live. And part of living love consciously, I believe, is responding to that, connecting to that, being aware, being consciously aware that my experience is not the only experience. The way I live life, not everybody lives life that way. The things I enjoy, not everybody enjoys that. Not everybody is blessed in the way that I am. We don't know what somebody else's struggles are. I experienced that this week, again, with Family Promise. That I don't know what somebody else's stressors are. I don't know what their life is like. I can be siloed in my own life. But when I am in an experience of connecting with someone, witnessing their life, witnessing their struggle, witnessing what must be a level of stress, a level of just depression, confusion, fear that I really don't know. I think it's important for us to be willing to connect with that in some way. To live consciously and do what we can to help mitigate that, eliminate that in our world. I've been having some conversations with Cherie Fink back here. She's back here in the back, has been attending for about 6 months or so. And she was telling me about an experience she had called poverty simulation. And she was telling me about how they got a group of people together and they get to experience going through a week, is it a week or 4 weeks? 4 weeks of someone's life who lives in poverty. Now, again, we know if we do something like that, we can leave that day and go back to our comfortable homes. But it's an opportunity to feel into that, to have the experience of what people who live in poverty might be experiencing. The things that we don't really think about, most of us don't really have to think about. And I hope that we can bring that here at some point soon so that we can have an experience of that. Because I think it's important for us to connect at a deeper level, to be consciously aware of what's going on in the world and how other people are living, and to be conscious about how we can respond to that. So that's part of it, educating ourselves, living love, responding to the need, connecting with people, having empathy for people, and compassion for each other. And while we are doing that, I think there's always more. There's always something more calling us. And lastly, I want to say, too, that living consciously, for me, is about also not only recognizing the Christ, the God, the expression of that life as us, you and me, and as all creation, as all people, and living in conscious awareness of that. It's also about being conscious of that life energy, the God that is expressing through all creation, through the earth and through the air and through the water and through our environment and all of the ways that God expresses. And that we can be in unconscious, live unconsciously or unconscious of our relationship to all of that, or we can choose to be more conscious of that and live from a more conscious awareness of that. I don't want to get into any controversy around any of that, but it does, what we do, the decisions we make, the choices we make in our lives impact the whole. Not just what we think, not just what we say, but what we do. And it's important for us to realize that. It's important for me to recognize that. And so there are things that we can do. We can make choices to live more consciously, to live love more consciously. And so I came up with a few things that while we can't solve all of the world's problems, we can't do it all, there are some things that we can do in respecting the environment and in making a difference. And so there's some slides we reduce, reuse, recycle. We can do those things. And if we do them consciously, not just because somebody says it's a good idea, not out of fear, not because, if I don't do it, they're going to think I'm bad or whatever, but to do it consciously because we know the truth. We're connected to God within the environment, within the earth, within the plants, within the animals. We use less of the world's resources, the earth's resources. We do that here. We do recycle. We do compost. There's a lot of education out there on one of the walls about what we're doing. Vicki has put together lots of information. Vicki takes the effort every week to go. Let me just tell you this. She will go through every bag of trash in this building to sort out what's recyclable, what's trash, and what is compostable. Now, would any of the rest of you do that? I would not. But that is dedication. That is commitment. That is living consciously. Or as she said, just crazy. No. So we're doing that, and I invite you to be more conscious of that. Maybe there'll be one day when Vicki doesn't have to sort the trash. That we're all aware of what's compostable, what's recyclable, what's trash, and we'll put them in the right receptacles. Imagine that happening. Next slide. Save water, save the earth. Again, it's a resource. It's a natural resource. Can we live consciously? Again, not because we have to, but because we care, because we see the Christ in the earth. We see Christ in the water. We see that as a creation that we are all a part of. Save water. Next slide, please. Plant a tree. Plant a tree. Could be fun. You may not have a yard to plant a tree. Maybe you can join a group that plants trees. But planting a tree is a simple thing that we can do. Plant a small tree in your backyard. It will grow. Next slide, please. Single-use plastics. Bad. For our environment, again, polluting the water, the ocean. I know we've all seen the evidence of what happens. So again, it's being conscious. What choices are we making to support the earth, to support the air, to support the water? Nancy Seghetti put together a bulletin board of some ideas, some thoughts, and it's out there now with the other stuff that Vicki has put together about recycling. So go by, take a look at that. There's just some ideas about things that we can do consciously, live consciously, to support the earth. Because we all share it. And we're all one in that energy. So you can go past that slide, Randy, thank you. So really, how do we live consciously? Again, we become conscious of the Christ, the life, the energy that is expressing as us, first and foremost. And when we become aware of that, when we really own it, we see through the eyes of that Christ. And we behold ourselves as that. And we begin to behold each other as that. We begin to behold the earth as that. We begin to behold all creation as that, and our oneness with it. A spiritually awakened world, to me, means awakened to the Spirit of the Christ, the light, the truth within us. And that a spiritually awakened humanity world living oneness, knowing who we are, knowing our truth, and valuing that within all creation. So it is a big decision we have made to live consciously. And I believe we're up to the task. But I do think it requires us to be conscious of our choices, of how we respond to each other, of how we respond to those that we see as different from us, who have different ideas, different concepts. I don't know what somebody else's life is like until I sit down and have a conversation with them. I don't know what somebody's experience, what their stressors are. I don't even necessarily know what my own preconditioned ideas and biases are until I have them revealed to me, become conscious of them, and then I can make conscious choices to live something different. So all of that is included in this idea to me of living consciously, living love consciously for ourselves, for each other, and for our planet and our environment. So thank you for stepping into that vision and mission. Thank you for saying yes and being willing to live consciously.